Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Shuaib Mohammad Bhat, Assistant Professor at the Department of English, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Okay, today in this lecture we shall be discussing about communication. Communication skills is the topic for today's discussion. So we shall be discussing communication. You will be very amazed to see what I have written this here. This is actually the phonetic transcription of this term, because what I realized in many of the classes, I see students, even the people who are associated with English, they're not pronouncing this term properly. The exact pronunciation it is communication. So today we shall be talking about communication. Now, what are the different things which we shall be discussing in today's session? It's like first we shall be trying to know what is communication, what are the different definitions of communication, and what is the exact meaning of communication. Then we shall be also trying to discover the process of communication. Then we shall be looking upon the types of communication. Then it is levels of communication. Then we shall be talking about different barriers to communication. And at the same time, we shall try to know how can we overcome communication barriers. So this is for today's discussion. Now let's go with the etymological meaning of communication. As I told you, we shall be discussing first what communication is. So the first slides, the first thing which I want to tell you is the etymological meaning of this term communication. Now the question may arise here, what is this etymological? It's the root, the origin of this term, because this is a very debated term, this is a very over-discussed term. So it's better if we go with the origin, if we know the term right from its roots. So what is this term? What does it mean? What is the origin of communication? Let's see what I have written. The word communication, it comes from a Latin word. The word is communicare, and which means to impart, which means to participate, and which means to transmit. So we can get some idea from this etymological meaning of communication. It's clear that it's something which discusses, which talks about how to impart and what to impart. So it's about something which can be imparted, which can be learned. And then the next thing is, it is about to participate. So it gives us an idea that communication is something which can be participated. Means it gives us the idea that it's between two people, or it is between two or more people. And at the same time, when we say it means to transmit, again we get the idea that it's some transmission is going to happen. Now again, as I told you, this is the etymological meaning. So we are trying to know the roots of this term communication. And I told you the term has been taken from Latin. It has its origin in Latin. So the word is communicare. Again, when we just go with the term communicare, we come to know that this term, this communicare, it has its root word, that is communis. What does that mean? It means to make communication or to share. So again, there is something like sharing. So we have something, this term, the etymological meaning of the communication, of the term communication, it says that it's something which can be shared. As I told you, it is something which can be transmitted. Now, let's move to some definitions of the term communication. See, when I have just taken the account of some famous personalities. The first one is Wilbur Sham. Now, who is this Wilbur Sham? He's an American scholar. He is the person who is named, or who is termed, or who is famous as the founder of communication studies. So we come to know that he is the person who is behind the communication studies. Now it's very interesting to hear from such personality about communication. So what he says about communication? He defines communication. He says it is a tool that makes societies possible and distinguishes humans from other societies. This we know, that we are different from other societies, from other creatures, because we communicate, because we have the power to express our ideas, our feelings. We communicate. That is what Wilbur Shams says. He says communication is a tool which makes societies possible. Obviously, a society cannot be possible. A society cannot stand unless and until the people living there can communicate. So we come to know that communication, Shams says it's a tool that makes societies possible and it distinguishes humans from other societies. Then we have other two people. We have Bernard Burleson and we have Gary Steiner. They both are behavioral scientists. So what do they speak about communication? They define communication. They say it is a transmission of information. It's a transmission of ideas, emotions, skills, etc. by the use of symbols, words, pictures, signs, graphs. Then they just elaborated their definition. They elaborated their concept by saying that it's the act or process of transmission that's usually called communication. So we come to know by the contribution, by the intervention of these two persons, these two famous personalities, what they say about communication. They say it is a transmission of ideas, it's a transmission of emotions, it is a transmission of skills. Obviously, we use different channels. Like we can transmit our ideas, we can transmit our opinions with the help of symbols, with the help of words, with the help of pictures, with the help of graphs. So these are different channels. Now, what is the gist of this definition? It's again the sharing, the transmitting of ideas, the transmitting of emotions, the transmitting of feelings. Then let's move to one more famous personality. It's Peter Little this time. Now, what Peter Little is saying about communication. Peter Little, he defines communication as a process by which information is transmitted between individuals or organizations so that an understanding response results. Yes, that's true. See what Peter Little's contribution to communication is. He says it is a process by which information is transmitted between individuals. So you may just see that is one thing which is common when we talk about different people, when we talk about the definitions given by different personalities, given by famous personalities, famous scholars. There is one thing common, that's transmission of ideas, transmission of feelings. That is transmission. So we come to know this communication is like its transmission. So that's what is Peter Little saying. He says it's a process by which information is transmitted between individuals or organizations so that an understanding response results. Obviously, when we communicate, when we talk, when we share, when we transmit, so we expect that an understanding understanding may be the result of a communication. It's not like we listen and we do not understand. Communication is not like somebody is making noise in front of us or somebody is saying something to us and we are not understanding. No, it's a two-way transport. It's communication is that dialogue, it's that process where one communicates and the other listens and understands. Or it's where a group talks and the other group listens and understands. This is what communication is. And the last person, the last scholar which I introduced, which I included in my lecture today is Alan Louis, or you can call him as Alan Lois. What is the contribution of Alan Louis? What he says? He defines communication as, he says, communication is the sum, it is the sum of all the things one person does when he wants to create an understanding in the mind of another. So he says, he defines communication, he says, it is the sum of all the things which a person is doing when he wants to create an understanding in the mind of another. Again, if you analyze these two definitions, one given by Peter Little and other given by Ellen Loy, you will find there is one thing common, that is to communicate, to talk, to transmit, and with the purpose to make it understanding, or to make it so that others can understand it. So that is what I told you the communication is. It's when we communicate, when we transmit, and other people are just understanding us. Then he says it's a bridge of meaning. Yes, obviously that it is. It's a bridge of meaning. Communication, by doing communication, we transmit the meaningful discourses. So that's why he says it's a bridge of meaning. Then he says it involves a systematic process of speaking. See, what are the different skills which are being utilized in communication? He says it's a systematic process of speaking. One speaks, others listen. It's speaking, listening, understanding, and responding. So we shall be looking upon these things when we go with the process of communication, or when we go with the different components of communication. Okay, now let's now, after just going through these different definitions, we come to know about the exact meaning of communication. That is what I have written here is communication. It's a process of transmitting, it's a process of exchanging, or you can say it's a process of sharing information, ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and we transmit, we share, we just transfer this information, ideas, or thoughts, or feelings sometimes through speech, sometimes through signals, sometimes through our behavior, and sometimes through writing. So these are the common mediums, common channels by which we transmit our information. Then we need to understand what is communication process. See, communication is not like that. An idea came to our mind and we are discussing, we are just speaking it, we are omitting it. It's not only this. It's a process. It's a systematic process. And there are different elements, there are different stages which an idea goes through before it's uttering, before we speak it. And again, there are some other concepts, there are some other stages which a dialogue, which a talk, which a statement goes through before it is being responded, or before it is being clearly assimilated by the listener or by listeners. So we need to understand that mechanism. We need to understand those components. And it is these components, they form communication process. And what is this communication process? There are some elements which I wrote here. See, you can see the first one is sender, and you can call it as source as well. Sender is someone who starts communication. Sender is someone who wants to just transmit some information, who wants to express his ideas, his feelings, his emotions. So we can say in communication process, the first component, the first element which we need is a sender, is a person who initiates communication, who starts communication, a person who wants to speak something. So that is sender. We can call it as source as well. Then there is second element, that is encoding. Now, what's encoding? Encoding means to encode a message. This is a kind of thought process. It happens in the mind of a sender. It happens in the mind of the source. The sender, what a sender is doing, a sender is collecting some words, collecting the meaning, collecting a message in his mind, so which he wants to transmit to his listener or to his or her listener or listeners. I have given a very interesting example I want to quote here. See, I have written this sentence which says, Rahul went to hill station and saw monkeys on picnic. See, this is how faulty encoding is sometimes occurring. And this is by this example you can know how much encoding is important and how one need to be very attentive when one encodes a message. See, this message, when you read this message, you can get two meanings. One is, this is our human nature, which says Rahul went to hill station and saw monkeys on picnic. When we use our human mind, human psychology, human nature, we interpret this message like this. Yeah, Rahul, he went to a hill station and he saw some monkeys there. Now the question is, who is on picnic? Now, as I told you, our human nature can tell us it's Rahul who went to picnic and he saw monkeys there. But if there is a person who is not known to this, who does not know this English language properly, and who is not aware of human behavior, he can connote this message in some other way. He can say, Rahul went to hill station, yes, it's okay, and he saw their monkeys, they were on picnic. So this sentence is having two connotations. It can lead you to two meanings. One is, yes, Rahul, he went to hill station, he went to picnic and he saw monkeys there on the hill station. But another connotation may be like this, Rahul went to hill station and he saw monkeys there, they were on picnic. So this is encoding, this all is encoding. Before encoding a message, you need to know your reader, you need to know your receiver first. So you need to encode your message in such a way so that your receiver may decode it in a proper way. It should not be like this. You are writing, you want to say, yeah, Rahul went to hill station on picnic and he saw monkeys there. But unfortunately, your receiver, he or she interprets the message like this, Rahul went to hill station and he saw their monkeys, they were on picnic. So encoding is a very serious process. As I told you, it is the mind game, it is the mind process. This all happens in the mind of the sender. The sender, he just gathers, he collects some ideas. He just collects these ideas in the mind which he wants to transmit to the receiver. Then the third thing is message. That is what you want to say. Okay, now you are aware that your receiver, he knows English well. For example, if you want to just transmit your message in English language, so you come to know your receiver is good at English language. He or she can easily understand even if you write some ambiguous sentences, ambiguous words. So you are aware of this thing. You know your listener or you know your readers well, your receiver well. So then there is the message which you encode in that format, which you feel it may suit better to your receiver, which you feel, yeah, my receiver can interpret this message as I want to interpret him or her. So then the third element is the message. Now the fourth one is channel. Channel is very simple to understand. Channel is any medium which you want to convey your message. For example, as I am giving lecture to you, this is a channel. For example, somebody is calling you. Your friend is calling you. Hello, how are you? Can you visit my home? So this is what your friend wants you to do. He wants you to visit his or her home, to your home. So telephonic conversation, that's a channel. So sometimes we are having face-to-face interactions, that is a channel. Sometimes we send an email, that's a channel. We sent a text message, that is a channel. So these are channels, there are different channels. Then we have the receiver. Receiver is one who receives your message. Receiver is one who listens you. Right now, you are my listener, you are my receivers. As I'm lecturing you, I'm giving you a lecture, I'm teaching you. So I'm the sender and you are my receivers, you are my listeners. Then there happens this process of decoding. Okay, decoding is done by the receiver. So what is decoding? Decoding is, for example, a receiver has received a letter, a message, a phone call. Now decoding again, it happens in the mind of the receiver. Now again, these are the words. For example, right now I am speaking to you. So I speak words to you. What you are doing? We are having such a mechanism where these words, they reach to your mind and you decode these words into meanings. For example, I am telling you a word like hill station, or I quoted a word monkey. So what you are doing, your mind, it very quickly, promptly, it translates this word monkey into meaning. When this word, it reaches to your ears, it directly goes to your mind and you come to know it's an animal. So this decoding, it happens in the mind of receiver. Then we have the last one, that is feedback. It's very compulsory. Because of this feedback, we know how good we are at communication. We know how good we are at our service, at our work. So this feedback is given by receiver. And when you get the feedback, you come to know how good your communication was. Was you literally good at communication? Have you literally sent your message in a good manner? And you come to know about your encoding. Are you good at encoding? And you come to know about your expectations. Because when you encode a message, you encode it according to the expectations of your readers. You are having the expectations from your readers. Okay, these readers are okay. I want to write a letter to my brother or to my friend. So I have in my mind the level of my friend or the level of my receiver, to what level I should write, which words I should use, which sentences I should use. Should I use simple sentences, or is my receiver capable to understand if I write compound sentences, if I write complex sentences, if I add some phrases and idioms in my speech, in my letter? So this all you come to know if you are a speaker or if you are a sender by the feedback. So feedback is the last component in the process of communication. Then the very interesting thing related to communication, which we all must know, is the types of communication. There are different types of communication. The two main types are there. When we talk about the types of communication, we need to understand that we all humans, we communicate in a number of ways. For example, when we are at home, among our family members, we communicate with the help of talking. Face-to-face interaction happens there between the siblings, or among the siblings, among the parents, among the family members. And sometimes we speak with our body language, sometimes we show some signals. So that's again a communication. Sometimes we show some pictures. That's again a type of communication. So on the basis of all these different types, so we can see all these different types, they come under two titles. One is verbal and other is non-verbal communication. Now, what's verbal communication? When we talk about verbal communication, it refers to the form of communication in which message is transmitted verbally. What do I mean by verbally? Verbally, I mean by when communication is done by the word of mouth or a piece of writing. Word of mouth, as if I am talking right now. This is word of mouth. This is verbal communication, where we use words, where we speak to the people, to the listener or to listeners. So this is verbal communication. And writing also is a verbal communication. For example, we write letters to our friends, to our relatives, to some offices, to some officers. We write emails, we write messages, we write different forms of writing are there by which we communicate with people. So all of these different types, where we speak with the word of mouth, where we speak with the piece of writing, so all of these different types, they come under the rubric of verbal communication. So as I told you, in the verbal communication we have two types. One is oral communication and the other is written communication. Oral is verbal, where we speak, and written is where we write. We write letters, we write emails, we write messages, different forms are there. Now this verbal communication, it has its own advantages and disadvantages when we talk about verbal communication. See, when we talk about the advantages of verbal communication, it's the first advantage is quickness in exchange of ideas. When we are having some face-to-face interaction, there is this quickness in exchange of ideas. Or when we write a letter, there is also quickness in exchange of ideas. And there is also a quick feedback, and it's flexible at the same time. And there is also a personal touch, and where we have the least chances of misunderstanding in oral communication. And it has its disadvantages as well. It's unfit for lengthy messages. It's unfit for policy matters. So we cannot only communicate with the word of mouth policy matters. So they need some written proof. And it has there is also the lack of written proof. I'm talking about oral communication. These are the advantages and disadvantages of oral communication. So there is this lack of written proof is there. For example, we are talking to our friends. We are talking about any important topic, about any important project. So we need some written proof for important talks, important dialogues. Important dialogues cannot only be taken or cannot only happen with the word of mouth only. So then physical presence is necessary. This is again a disadvantage. For example, when we talk about oral communication, physical presence is necessary. Sometimes we cannot be physically present or everywhere. So there we need some other form of communication, like written communication. So, but when we talk about oral communication, this is a disadvantage, that physical presence is necessary. And we sometimes include some unnecessary information when we are physically present. See, when we are talking, when we are physically present, we are being impressed or we are being influenced by the surroundings. For example, I want to write a letter to any of my relatives or to any of my friends. I want to tell my friend that I'm going to attend a project in any university. So what will I write in the letter? I may not mention that right now I am on a railway station where I am writing this letter to you. Or I cannot mention that I am writing this letter from the college library. I am surrounded by a lot of students. There are students who are studying. There are students who are maintaining the discipline of the library. No need to mention. Or sometimes we have some barriers, some physical barriers are there when we talk. So this thing is a kind of disadvantage of oral communication. So when you are having an oral communication, there you are sometimes providing some unnecessary information. Sometimes because of your surrounding, sometimes because of your temperament, sometimes because of the mood of your listener, of your listeners. So this was all about oral communication, which I discussed. Then we have this written communication. As I told you, this is the mode of communication where we transmit, where we transfer the message via email, via letters, via reports, via memoirs. Sometimes we write memoir. So these are the different modes by which we can transmit our information. So this form of communication is known as written communication. Then we have non-verbal communication, the second type of communication. We discussed verbal communication, now we have non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication, and it's rightly said by someone that most of the communication occurs through non-verbal communication. And non-verbal communication is considered as more effective communication. Now, what is this non-verbal communication? It refers to the ways in which human beings convey information about their emotions, needs, intentions, not with the help of verbal language. Then this communication, it occurs with the help of like body language, facial gestures, created spaces, and more. So now we come to know that this is not the communication which can occur with the help of oral word, with the help of words, or with the help of writing. No, rather this is the communication which we do, or which is done by body language, which is done by gestures, which is done sometimes by facial expressions, sometimes by eye movements. And this type of communication is also known as kinesics. I have written the pronunciation of this term. It can be known as, this is the very technical term which we can give to non-verbal communication. We call it as kinesics. Kinesics. It can be termed as body language. I want to just, now this thing is clear to all of us. What is verbal communication and what's non-verbal communication? Verbal communication is the communication which we do with the help of words, or which we do with the help of writing. Non-verbal communication is that communication where we don't have any interference of words, where we don't have any interference of writing. Rather, it is the communication of body language. Body language, it includes many things like facial expressions, like eye movements, like some gestures, body gestures. So this communication is done by these things. There are some terms which I want to discuss with you, which are associated with non-verbal communication. The first term is, we call it haptics. Haptics. The pronunciation is written there. Hope you understand this well. It's haptics. This is called the communication of touch. What is this communication of touch? Sometimes any person. Okay, let's take the example of your younger brother or your younger sister. When they do something which is wonderful, which is good, which is exciting, we pat them, sometimes on the shoulder, sometimes on the back, like this. Okay, good, nice. So this patting is something, it's a communication. It is, we are telling them, yeah, wonderful, you have done great. So this patting, it's called haptics in non-verbal communication, which means it is the communication of touch. We are doing different communications, different things we are communicating by touch. Sometimes we push someone back. We show our anger. So this communication of touch, it conveys a lot of meanings. A gentle touch on somebody's shoulder like this shows that we are happy with that person. Or sometimes we push a person back. So that means we are angry with that person. So this is communication. This is how we are telling people that at the same time we are happy with you by a soft pat, by a polite pat, and by a jerk, by a push. We are telling people we are angry with you. Communication, non-verbal communication. Then we have the second term, it's proxemics. The second term is proxemics. What is proxemics? It is the communication of space distancing. Space, yeah, it is. We communicate by some space as well. The space which we need to maintain in between us. Space also talks about communication. So, uh, for example, I want to convey any message to you. So, if I am letting a space, this letting a space, or if I am maintaining a space in between you and me, it conveys some meaning. It means, yeah, there is something, it has a meaning in it. So there we have this component in nonverbal communication, which we call as proxemics. It talks about the space, it talks about the distance. Then we have the next term, that is chronemics, time. It is the communication of time. At what time I should talk. At what time? See, it's very, I can say it's very odd, or I can say it's very ridiculous. If you are calling to anybody at midnight, if you want any information from someone and you are calling at midnight, so that's not a proper time to talk. That's not a proper time to call anyone, because it's expected that everybody may be sleeping at that time. So communication of time. Then we have the next term, that is oculesics. Oculesics, it deals with the eye movement. Eye movements. We communicate different things with the movement of eyes, with the eye movements. So we are showing different things. We talk, we communicate with the help of eye movements. Then we have the next thing, that is sign language. There is this example in front of you. This picture can show you what is sign language. We are showing different things by the signs. Or you can take the best example, the traffic signal, traffic signs. There are different signs which are shown on traffic signals as well. Where to take right, where to take left. So different signs are there on the roads. And this is also the example of sign language. How can we write A? This is the sign, how can we write A? And this is the sign, how can we write B? So this language is more applicable to the specially abled people, those who cannot hear. So those who are specially abled. So we use this sign language with those people. And we have another thing, that is vocalics. It can be called as paralanguage. So we will discuss it later on. It talks about, it's nothing rather than tone, volume, and pitch. See, no doubt you are conveying, your words contain the meaning. Whatever you are saying, whatever you are communicating, your words that contain the meaning. But remember, your tone, your volume, your pitch, that speaks more than your words. That shows what exactly you know by speaking a word. For example, I'm telling anyone, you have done good. In this way, in this assertive way, in this normal way, you have done good. So that person may take it in this way, yeah, I have literally done good. Now if I am speaking like this, oh, you have done good. So this tone, this volume, this pitch, it shows that it's something which is negative. So this vocalics or paralanguage, it talks about tone, it talks about volume, it talks about pitch. So this also comes under the rubric of non-verbal communication. Again, we have advantages and disadvantages. So when we talk about we have among advantages, there is, it provides clarity, it reduces wastage of time, there's quick transmission of information. It's helpful to specially abled people, those who are specially abled, those who cannot hear us, or those who cannot speak. This non-verbal communication is helpful to those people. And at the same time, it's an alternative, it's a substitute for verbal communication, for verbal language. It has disadvantages as well. There is lack of formality. It does not have that formality which our written communication or which our oral communication has. It's not sequential. It's not ordered communication. So at the same time, it is difficult to understand. So because we are not trained in non-verbal communication, we can only understand few signs, few gestures, but we cannot entirely understand the whole non-verbal communication, the whole sign system. Then long conversations aren't possible. They are not possible, really. Long conversations are not possible with the help of body language. And there is one thing, this is a disadvantage, that is meaning varies across cultures. So there are different cultures who have given different meanings to different signs. For example, if I talk about a place like Jammu and Kashmir, so when we ask somebody, like when we want some positive answer, like we are asking somebody, are you understanding me? So there people, they nod head like this. It means, yeah, yes, we understand you. Now, if we talk to the Middle India, these states, or if we talk about the South India, so we see when we ask somebody, are you understanding me? So people nod their head like this. It means their yes. But in the culture of Jammu and Kashmir, this means no. So now see, this can create a lot of confusion. For example, you come there to Jammu and Kashmir and you are just defining each and everything very clear to the people, and at the end, or you are coming to the South India, or you are coming to some other place where this gesture means yes, and you are explaining each and everything very comfortably, and at the end you are asking, you understood well and you got this gesture. What you come to know, and what will be your reaction? You may think, yeah, people may not understanding me well. So this is what I mean by meaning varies across cultures. So we are one from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, we are one. So what I want to say is this, meaning it varies across cultures. Then there is one thing, distant conversations are not possible. People who are just living in distant places. So this non-verbal communication is not possible because there are many barriers. So this non-verbal communication is not possible at distant places. Now, I would like to just go with the levels of communication. There are different levels of communication. Like we have intrapersonal communication, we have interpersonal communication, we have small group communication, we have one-to-group communication, communication, then we have mass communication. So what are these different headings? Like inter, small group communication, one-to-group communication, mass communication. Let's understand them one by one. See, when we talk about intrapersonal communication, so it is the communication that occurs in one's mind, in one's own mind. Like it's like dreaming. It includes dreaming, thinking, remembering, deciding. You all may have observed this thing. There are many times when we think, when we remember details, when we are deciding in our mind what to do. So this all can be termed as intrapersonal communication. And as I can give an example. For example, when you make any kind of decision like what to wear or eat. So this decision making, it's intrapersonal communication. It is the communication which is occurring in your own mind. So the communication which occurs in one's mind is termed as intrapersonal communication. Different examples I have written, like what you want to do on the weekend. Again, another example of intrapersonal communication. This is what we are thinking in our mind, what to do on the weekend. Another example, when you think about someone or something, when you think about someone, you think about your friend, about your parents, your relatives, your teachers, or you think about something, about anything, about any place, about any monument, historical monument, about anything. When you are thinking about places, persons, about anything, any creature, whether natural or man-made. So this communication is termed as intrapersonal communication. Then we have the second one, which is termed as interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication. What is interpersonal communication? Now, it is a process of face-to-face interaction. And this interaction, it occurs between people, like, as I told you, it occurs between sender and receiver, such as we have group meetings, we have interviews, we have discussions. Now, some examples I have quoted, like when you are talking to your friends, you are having a face-to-face interaction with your friends, or a teacher and a student, they are discussing an assignment in a face-to-face conversation. We call it interpersonal. It is interpersonal, means in between persons. Means we have both the parties. We have the speaker and we have the receiver, or we have speakers and we have receivers. Both of the parties are present. So we call this interpersonal. Intra means inside the person, which I discussed. Intra, inside. Inter, in between or among the persons. So this is among the people. Like we have an example, a patient and a doctor discussing a treatment. A manager and an employee during an interview. All of these kinds of these are the examples of interpersonal communication. Like I have given this picture, it can tell you what is interpersonal communication. We have a sender and a listener. You can quote anyone among them as sender or listener. So they talk, face-to-face conversation is happening. Face-to-face conversation is going on. So this is called as interpersonal, which is among the persons. Then we have small group communication. This is small group communication, communication among small groups. So this is the communication which occurs within the formal or informal groups or teams. And what happens in this communication? It's like a group discussion which results in decision making, problem solving, and discussion within an organization. So when we talk about small group communication, it is the communication which occurs, which is both formal or informal communication, which is both like we have both formal and informal groups, and it is the communication which results in decision making, problem solving, and some discussion within an organization or outside an organization. A normal talk among friends, that's also small group communication. An example is like, it's a group discussion planning a surprise birthday party to someone, for someone. So this is small group communication. Then we have one-to-group communication. See, this picture can tell you. One-to-group communication. There is one person, he is communicating with the group. This communication is called as one-to-group communication. It requires a speaker who seeks information, or who seeks to inform, to persuade, or to motivate an audience. Now, I have given some examples like a teacher and a class of students. Like I am right now informing you, I am giving you some information. It's a one-to-group communication. A preacher and a congregation and a gathering. A preacher. We have different preachers who are preaching, who are delivering their lectures, speeches, sermons. Or a speaker and an assembly of people in the auditorium. That's also an example of one-to-group communication. Then we have mass communication. What's mass communication? It's very common. Mass communication, it's electronic or print communication, or electronic or print transmission of message to the general public. It includes radio, television, newspapers, films. So we do transmit, or we do communicate with the people with the help of radio, with the help of television, with the help of films, with the help of different serials, with the help of newspapers, with the help of journals. So all such modes of communication, they come under the title of mass communication. Now, there are some barriers in communication. When we talk about communication, there are some barriers. Like the first one is physical barrier, emotional barrier, cultural barrier, language barrier, and gender barrier. These are not the only barriers. There are different barriers like psychological barrier. Different barriers are there. But I will just discuss here some main barriers. What is physical barrier? See, physical barrier, it means any disturbance in our surrounding, which can lead to ineffective communication. For example, right now I'm talking to you. I'm just delivering this lecture. If somebody in the background speaks or shouts, or if we have any disturbance of the light, if we have any disturbance of any equipment here, that can be counted as physical barrier. So there are physical barriers. Such barriers can occur with, like, as I have written, outdated computers. Internet connectivity can sometimes be physical barrier. This you all might have noticed during COVID times. Sometimes while delivering or while attending the classes via Zoom or via some other online platform, we sometimes faced weak internet connections. So that is a physical barrier. As I told you, some background noise, that's also a physical barrier. Then we have emotional barrier. Yeah, emotional barrier is also there. Our emotions, they prevent us sometimes to communicate openly, to share our thoughts. As you can see in this picture, there is this person. She seems a very generous, a kind person, as she wants to talk to the other person, other lady. But she seems a lady who is little bit angered. She's very angry. She seems very angry. So this is the emotional, we can call it an emotional barrier. Now, what is emotional barrier? This emotional barrier to communication, it is the result of low emotional intelligence. For example, example of this emotional barrier is, like sometimes we are angry, sometimes we are having some preconceived notions about somebody else. We are angry with someone, or sometimes we feel, we are in pride sometimes. So that pride, that anger or anxiety, it prevents us to communicate with others. For example, you may have imagined this thing. That's why it is rightly said by someone that think before you speak. Or it is like, we should not speak when we are angry, when we are emotional. We should not make decisions, because when we are emotional or when we are angry or when we are feeling, it's a kind of moment when I feel like some pride, some arrogance, or some anxiety we are facing through, we should not take decisions, or we should not communicate with people at that time, because these are the situations which prevents us to communicate openly. These are the situations where we are not able to communicate openly. So these emotions, they become a barrier to communication. For example, I would like to give you an example. If I have some frustration right now, if I have some sort of anger because of some personal incident of my life or personal episode of my life, so that anger may stop me to communicate to you openly, to freely. because right now my mind is busy with some other work. Right now I'm angry because something wrong has happened to me. So all these barriers, they count as emotional barriers to communication. Then we have cultural barrier. Yeah, cultural barrier is something which is very, very threatening. Something we should be just disappeared. See, there are some terms are there which I want to discuss with you. The first one is ethnocentrism. What is this ethnocentrism? It is a belief that one's culture is superior to another. We humans, there are many people who are of this view that our culture is superior to other culture. So it should not be there. When we are having such mentality, our culture is superior to the culture of other country or other people, so it becomes a barrier for communication. For example, if I consider, or if anybody considers his culture superior than other person's culture, so this idea of superiority on the basis of culture, it may not allow this person to come down and talk to the people whom he considers that they are the people of inferior culture. So it becomes a barrier. Then we have this stereotyping. Yeah, there are some preconceived notions about others based on their nationalities. Sometimes we think, yeah, he's from this nation. Oh, he may not be a good person. Oh, he may not be a cultured person. He's not a person to talk to. So we are individuals. No doubt we carry our national identities with ourselves. But we are an individual being. But I am an individual being and we are individual beings. So we all have an individual entity. So we all have an individual self. And that self cannot be defined by any nation, by any tag of culture or nation. So these are the things which become barriers on the basis of culture. So also we have geographical distance. For example, he lives so far from us. So it becomes a barrier. How it becomes a barrier? Oh, he may not be knowing about me, or he may not be attending any event because he lives so far from here. Oh, so we should not talk to that person. For example, there is an event which is going to happen at the center of any country. Now the organizer is thinking that the people who live at the border of the country, they may not be attending this event because they are far from this place. See, this geographical distance, it has become a barrier because you are not aware that any good person, any good participant may come from that extreme area or extreme border of your country. These all are the cultural barriers. Then we have language barrier. Yeah, this image can tell you. See, there is a person, he says hello, and there is some other person, he says something different. Someone says ni hao, bonjour. So all these words, they mean hello, but different languages. Language also becomes a barrier. So these barriers, when they occur, when we are having people who speak different languages. Sometimes there are people who do not dare, who do not want to talk to other people only for the reason because they have some other language. Or sometimes people who do not know other languages, so it's obviously a barrier for them to speak in that language. For example, you are living in China and we are not aware of the language which Chinese speak. So we are not attending some important meetings, important events, important rituals, important festivals, because we are not able to communicate in that language, in their own language. So language becomes a barrier. So these are the barriers to communication. Language barrier is there. And there is also gender barrier is also there. there are again gender stereotypes are there. For example, man has been given this role and women has been given that role. It becomes, because nature, it never discriminates on the basis of gender. So nature has created man and woman as equal. So there should not be any stereotype, or there should not be any role which is fixed to a lady, or any other role which is fixed to a woman, to a man, to gents. Not at all. So by doing this, we are creating gender barriers. How? For example, we are having this idea about the women, about ladies, that they are soft spoken. So it doesn't mean if we do injustice to them, they will remain soft spoken. And this is what is the result of this false assumption which we have made. For example, when a lady speaks in an assertive tone, we count it as we treat it as indiscipline. When in reality, that's not an indiscipline. It's her right to talk in an assertive way. So it becomes a barrier. Gender also becomes a barrier, because we have gender stereotypes, because we have set some gender roles, and those gender roles, they prevent both the genders, both man and women, to communicate in a very free manner. Then how can we overcome these barriers to communication? There are some important these precepts by which we can overcome gender barriers. Like, the first thing is, we need to take our receiver more seriously. When we take our receiver more seriously, when we take our audience more seriously, that means we will try to avoid all the barriers. That means we will try to choose a language which our listeners may understand properly. So language barrier is erased. That means we will never speak in anger. We will not speak when we are having some sort of anxiety. Emotional barrier is reduced. So the first thing is to take our receiver seriously. Then the crystal clear message. Crystal clear, to the point message. We should not give details of the surroundings. We should not go with the side details. Rather, what we should do, the message should be crystal clear, so that we can avoid the barriers. Then, skillfully we have to deliver the message. What is skillfully? What is the skill which we have to use? The skill is to know your audience. The skill is to know the temperament, know the language of your audience. So if you know your audience well, that means, and if you are speaking according to the expectations of your audience, that means you are a skillful speaker. So we need to just deliver message skillfully. Then we need to focus on the receiver. Again, focus on the demands of the receiver. And we need to use multiple channels to communicate. Multiple channels. So by doing this, we can overcome barriers. We should not rely on a single channel. Then ensuring appropriate feedback. We should ask for feedback. It will help us to know whether our communication, whether my communication, whether my dialogue delivery, whether my lecture, whether my speech was understood by my audience or not. Then we should be aware of our own state of mind, emotions, and attitude. That means we should not speak with some emotions when we are emotional. We should not speak when we are having some different attitude. So we should be aware of our mind. Okay, this is how we finish today's lecture on communication skills. I hope you all have enjoyed and understood it well. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.